You know, they're crown board with an escape.
Ugh.
On board with an escape.
Ugh. That's going to look good for tomorrow.
Well, hello folks. This isn't the extraction video that I was going to put out this week, but I filmed the process of lifting the supers off. I still have a few to take off, and I just thought it'd be interesting because it is part of the process of harvesting honey. So, hope you enjoyed the video. Well, it's time to remove these supers. I've had the escape boards fitted for a week now, a bit longer than they should be, but I have peeped into them on a few occasions there just to make sure the bees weren't working their way back up. The ivy flow is in full swing at the moment. As you can see, these bees are very busy and I'm blocking their entrance, but it's in full swing, so the bees aren't interested in going up into the honey that's in the supers. So this is kind of my saving grace, as it were, and has allowed me to leave these supers on for the week. One of the things that I do go out to clear the supers with is just a mini blower, and this particular one is a Bosch GBL 18V120. You know, it's a handy light little machine just to go out with. It's battery operated. I have the 5 amp hour batteries on. They last a good while if I need them, but I have been to the other sites and have taken the supers off them already, and because I had the clearer boards on for a week, pretty much there were no bees to blow out. But it's just a handy little piece of kit to have. You don't need a big leaf blower contraption, you know. It's only just to blow out if there's any residual bees left in the supers. You're not blowing out full supers of bees. But it just means you're not bringing bees back into your honey house or your kitchen, wherever it is that you may be doing your extraction. So another thing I do when bringing in my supers is I mark them just with a bit of chalk, and this just helps me kind of keep track as to what colony did what. I can count, first of all, just straight off the number of supers that each colony had on it, and then I can just make a note as to, you know, what was in those supers in terms of overall quantity. And if there are different honeys, if I'm going to different locations, for example, you know, I can make a note obviously as to what was in each box. But just generally what I'm marking out is, and I've shown this before, I use these tags. So this is my colony number, this is my queen, and the year. So she's a red queen. This is a yellow, so yellow 36. So I will mark the box with the location, so that's V, and then yellow 36. And it's as simple as that, and I'll do that the whole way up. As well, then when it comes to just when I put the supers away, store them for the winter, I store them in blocks according to where they are, the particular apiary that they belong to, so that then I can access those supers at each apiary, so for each apiary, accordingly. So it just means then that I avoid mixing supers up if at all possible. It happens occasionally, but the vast majority of times the supers that came off this apiary will go back out to this apiary next year. So some of these colonies have a lot of boxes on them. Well, that's because the bees still built up during the summer, but they were consuming everything that they brought in. So in terms of, optically, it looks great that this box has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 boxes, and the top box is a deep. But by and large, the majority of colonies, I suppose the crop that's contained in the boxes is a lot less than it would be normally. What I'm finding is the central frames generally seem to be capped, but some of them only halfway down on the frame, and that kind of, the bees chimneyed their way up this year, and then they seem to have consumed the stores that were in the outer edges of the boxes, or just didn't use the frames at all. Well, the crop just wasn't in it. Now it always, this time of the year always, well, some years it's not as great, but at the moment my colonies are spilling out of the boxes. You come over here and have a look. For example, these are spilling out, and it's getting later into the evening now, so it's just not maybe as busy looking, but earlier on there today it was crazy. And I can see I've taken supers off this one already, and in fact I've confused the bees a little bit, and they're starting to collect on the neighbouring box. So it's if we had this during the summer, and all of these colonies I've taken splits out of, and this is what we're looking at, because the bees just go mad on the ivy. That's it, and it's quite cool at the minute. It's not as warm as it was in the previous days, and it's been overcast all day and getting late on into the evening now, and these bees are still spilling out of the hives. Didn't see sign of that, even though, as I said, the boxes were full. Didn't see sign of that during the summer months, but I suppose, having said all that, the majority of these colonies are condensed down into single boxes now. So even though I took splits off and the colonies were, relatively small as full-size colonies, there's a brood hatch going on in time, you might say, to collect the ivy in the next 2 to 3 weeks, because it's, the ivy only started last weekend, so we still have at least until mid-October, if not more, where the bees will try to maximise on taking in this crop to get winter stores done. Anyway, I'm going to crack on here with removing these supers before it gets much later, because it's going to leave it obviously more difficult. Just wanted to show you one other thing. I've shown you this in the video where I was fitting the escape boards, or I said it in the video at some point. I do leave a queen excluder on underneath the escape board, And I do that for a couple of reasons. One of the reasons is I'm always afraid that if the bees do start working their way back up the escape board, the queen might follow suit and come up with them. But one of the other reasons I do it is because in situations like this where I've left these on now for a week and good strong colonies, we are likely to find them starting to build brace comb up underneath. And yes, they've definitely got it welded down. But look at that. Look at that. They have wasted no time in building brace comb. Bit of a waste, but it is what it is, as they say. Again, this is a colony that 3 frame splits were taken out of. And that ivy nectar is already starting to crystallise in that comb. Unbelievable. But that's what it does. Just look at that for a super strong colony. Not as big maybe, but not too bad either. And you can see what they did. Now, not ideal, but I will leave that out here and they'll clean it up. I'll have to scrape this off as well. You can see the wasps are already starting to be attracted to it. I'm just going to blow the bees off. Now, some people put on a riser or an empty super with no frames in it, and they let the bees build this wild comb up and then harvest ivy honey with that. Because as you can see there, the ivy honey is crystallizing. Well, I don't know if you can see it, but it's starting to crystallize in the cells there already. And this is stuff that's only built, over the last couple of days. And this nectar is freshly coming in. It's not even fully filled. This cell, you can see they've still a good bit of space to go in that cell before it was filled. And that is already crystallizing. It's going. I'll just see if I can get it. Look. So ivy honey is a bit disastrous that way. And if it gets into your supers, it starts solidifying. And if the bees have if they're topping up cells with the ivy honey, cells that had, say, summer blossom in it, it'll crystallize the contents of those cells as well. So that's how quick they can bring it in. If they're a good strong colony, they can pull it in that quickly, and it can very quickly turn what was a nice super of summer blossom into a quarter of it anyways, starting to go solid. So I do leave the queen excluder on during the winter, because I just find it's sort of a way, especially in these poly hives, to let a little bit of air flow. The lid will go on, obviously, that'll provide the top cover insulation, but just it leaves a sort of lid. Now I know the bees will propolize it, or they potentially will. I also put on the foil tray, so that kind of seals down tight over the queen excluder, and it just means then in the spring I don't really have to think about carrying in and out queen excluders. Some of them do get clogged up, then I'll remove it and I'll replace it for a fresh one and bring it off and clean it. But just for this, because then I can come along as well and I can drop block of fondant directly on top of the queen excluder. I know it's supported and it's not going to start dripping down and collapsing down into the frames or into the brood nest over the winter. So that's kind of my reasoning, whether it works or not, or whether there's any substance to that. That's another thing, but that's why I do it. Yeah, so I'm removing all the Paradise Honey boxes from this site first, because it's just, I then stack all the Paradise Honey boxes on top of each other, and it just helps to try and keep things organised. And then I'll move on to the Abello boxes, and I'll stack all the Abello boxes on top of each other. Again, just look at those bees collecting outside, and as I said, I took splits from these colonies. Majority of them was 3 frame splits, 3 frames of solid brood. I didn't actually have, I suppose the brood chambers were quite dry when it came to stores. It's one of the reasons why I left the supers on till now, until September. You know, I was waiting for that ivy flow to start, because then I wouldn't have to feed the bees with what I would call synthetic feed. But so you can just see how strong those colonies are. Now, you know, obviously they're in single boxes, so that's one of the reasons. But you know, those Abello boxes, for example, they're 12 frame boxes, so 1 extra frame than your standard national brood box. So that's what I like to see, you know, at this time of the year. Good strong colonies that are piling out of the boxes at this time of the year. You know, even with splits haven't been taken. Now there will be a huge depreciation in bees, you know, in the next couple of, possibly within the next week, and that's because obviously the 2 or 3 frames of brood that I would have taken out, the knock-on effect is that is going to be felt, you know, over the next week while the bees are in full swing. You know, you're going to have a lot of tired bees coming back from the ivy, and they're just going to drop off. That's going to be, you know, that's how your colony, I suppose, downsizes for the winter. The queens may kick back up to lay up 2 to 3 frames of brood, maybe more, some of them, but you know, especially the younger queens. But by and large, you know, queen brood rearing is much reduced, and obviously the bees, their kind of main drive at the moment is to fill in as much of that ivy nectar. So very quickly they can become, I suppose, honey bound. But on a 12 frame box, I'm not really that concerned about it. And if the queen has room to lay today, shall we say, in 3 weeks time, that round of brood is going to hatch. And you know, once she has that space filled with eggs, they're not going to become honey bound, you know, today or tomorrow kind of thing. But it's just gradually, she may still want to keep a relatively big nest, but gradually her space is going to shrink as the nectar that's brought in starts filling up the space inside. So it's both a blessing and a curse, you might say. Okay, so I'm going to mark this particular blue one, take the boxes off, bring them in, and that's it. Now, just to show you then, you know, leaving the escape boards on for a week, and especially when there's a flow going on, there's very little to be concerned about in terms of bees coming up. These boxes are by and large empty. One or two stragglers. Now, you may recall I said this foil, I always use foil. I have foil from a German retailer that has lasted me for years, and I've decided this year to replace a lot of it, and that stuff is just falling asunder. Dare I say where I got it. So you saw a bee come up there and go down. You know, you're going to have 1 or 2 residual ones. 1 or 2 don't pose much of a problem, but if you have a little collection of them somewhere, it can pose a bit of a problem, especially when you bring them into the honey house. How do you get them out? So that's it. You can see there's some capped on this, capped on the inside part. That's the third box up. But they drew comb there. They were starting to work on this one, drew comb there, and again they were starting on this one. But yeah, overall very disappointing. Anyway, I'm going to remove these quickly before I start attracting too much attention. Much better box here. I'm looking at capped. Both the outside and the inside, and yeah. But pretty dry here on this one, so there's some, but not much. There's a few bees there, so I'm just going to blow them off. I'll bring it in and get whatever that is in it out. I'll just show you another one. Doesn't look much there. But that's the underside of the escape board. And again, 3 weeks ago I took splits off those colonies, so that'll show you it's beneficial to actually take splits off at this time, because the queens kind of kick off again and get going. They think, oh, I don't have enough bees. A lot of these bees, or the reason why the colony has expanded so much, is because there's a hatch of young bees going on at the moment below in the brood chamber. When I took the split out, I inserted, if I had it, for most of them anyway, I did, it was either 1 or 2 frames of drawn comb, and then 2 frames or 1 frame of foundation, and that's what I put into the full-size colonies. Now I know, stores are obviously a bit of an issue, or forage was an issue in general, but most of them seem to have drawn that frame of foundation, and of course the queen is going to be attracted to that fresh comb that's put in, and also the foundation that went in, fresh foundation that was drawn. So the queens kind of then utilised that and went into a bit of overdrive, because there was obviously a bit of a panic going on as well in relation to, we don't have enough bees to firstly harvest the ivy, and secondly overwinter. So right now she's producing her overwintering bees. So that's why I find making late season splits, well, when I say late season, I mean early August time, or mid-August. I find them to be of a benefit to the colonies, especially where you have a good strong queen. So I just thought I'd share this with you. On the Abello hives, I got the rhombus pieces, got these from Dingle Bee Supplies, did a good deal on. But I decided that I'd use the Abello crown board and just tack these on directly to the Abello crown board. Abello, funnily enough, they sell a version of their crown board with an escape. It's going to look good for tomorrow. Well, I just thought I'd share this with you, about the Abello crown boards, if anybody's thinking of using them as escape boards. I got a load of the rhombus pieces. I got them from Dingle Bee Supplies there. They had a good deal on this year, and thought to myself I'd use the Abello crown boards, or the Lyson crown boards, and tack these on directly to them. Now Abello sell a version of them, or their crown board with the escape board tacked on, for a certain sum, but yeah, so I just decided that I would use them and just use thumbtacks to tack them on. Lesson is, don't use thumbtacks, because the bees actually propolized the rhombus piece down to the top bars of the frames. The spacing is very tight, as in maybe at parts the rhombus board or the rhombus piece might actually rest on the top bars, so they had them propolized down, or a little bit of brace comb built up in the gap, and it meant that when I lifted them off, the tacks simply pulled out and then dropped down between the frames. I got some of them out on some of the hives, but on others I haven't, so a bit of a nuisance, and I don't really like having a thumbtack down in among brood frames, but anyway, it is what it is, and it's a lesson learned. Don't try and take a shortcut, and if I'm going to do something like that, use screws, or get dedicated crown boards, or just use the escape boards that I normally use. So anyway, that's just going to know. So I hope you enjoyed that video, folks. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Like and subscribe and all of that if you did like it. And I'll see you in the next video, which is definitely going to be extracting the honey crop.